Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to The Inner Voice with Dr. Foojan Zeine, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be with all of you again. This is the Inner Voice Show. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine, and this show is about all that matters in our life, the way that our thought works, our feelings, our behaviors, the way that we impact ourselves, our lives, and everyone else and each other's lives. And I speak with experts and in the field of psychology, in the field of human sciences, and bring the jewel of their wisdom and their experience to you. And I usually bring some research, but today I'm excited to have Dr. Daniel Siegel with me from UCLA, and he is all about research and his latest book. So I'm going to give all of the program to be able to speak with him and share him with you. Today, for all of you who have been following our radio show for the past year, just letting you know that today in LA Talk Radio would be the last day, and I'm so excited that our finale of our show is actually being done with Dr. Daniel Siegel. All of you can still continue following me at the KMET 1490 AM, which is an ABC radio, and you can go to KMET 1490am.com, and you can also just go to my podcast. I have two podcasts, which is what we have here, Inner Voice, or you can have it Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan, and you can also go to my YouTube channel, Dr. Foojan Zeine. All of the programs that I ever do will be on my YouTube channel. You can go to Foojan Zeine or Foojan.com, Foojan.com, and be with me as we continue this type of programming. And I've just had a blessing to be with LA Talk Radio, and I've had an amazing time this past year, and it's just paths are shifting and I need to move to another location, and that's why I have chosen to complete this program and continue with the other one. So I'm still with all of you. It's just that it's going to be in another medium, and I'm excited today to be able to speak with Dr. Daniel Siegel. So we'll be right back after these messages with Dr. Daniel Siegel.
Dr. Foojan Zeine is a psychotherapist, a marriage and family therapist, and a life coach with more than 27 years of experience. She is the author of the Awareness Integration Model, which has been researched and published in numerous international journals. Dr. Foojan has offices in Beverly Hills, Irvine, and Woodland Hills, California, and also consults online and by telephone. Make an appointment with her today by calling 818-648-2140 or go online to www.foojan.com. That's www.foojan.com. Were you recently injured in a car accident? Then you need the law offices of Aria Thadakar for your free case evaluation. Don't let the medical bills pile up, and don't let the insurance companies try to settle your claim for a few $100s. Call 714-464-3246. The law offices of Aria Thadakar serves all of California. If they don't win, you don't pay. So call now, 714-464-3246. This is a paid-for attorney advertisement by the law offices of Aria Thadakar of Orange, California.
Have you ever wished you could just wake up one day, reach across your nightstand, and hit the life reset button? Let's face it, the struggles and frustrations of everyday life leave millions of women and men around the globe yearning for a new way. And the new way is right here in Life Reset, the awareness integration path to create the life you want, by Dr. Foojan Zeine. You can get it now at Foojan.com or Amazon.com. Life Reset, the awareness integration path to create the life you want. You deserve it.
Well, I'm excited to have Dr. Daniel Siegel with us. Are you, Dr. Siegel, are you online?
Yes, I'm online. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Let me tell our audience a little bit about you. Dr. Daniel Siegel received his medical degree from Harvard University and completed his postgraduate medical education at UCLA with training in pediatrics and child, adolescent, and adult psychiatry. Dr. Siegel is a clinical professor of psychiatry at the UCLA School of Medicine and the founding co-director of the Mindful Awareness Research Center at UCLA. An award-winning educator, he's a distinguished fellow of the American Psychiatric Association and recipient of several honorary fellowships. He's also the executive director of the Mindsight Institute, an educational organization which offers online learning and in-person seminars that focus on how development of mindsight in individuals, families, and communities can be enhanced by examining the interface of human relationships and basic biological processes. His psychotherapy practices include children, adolescent, adults, couples, and families, and he serves as the medical director of the Lifespan Learning Institute and an advisory board of Blue School in New York City, which has built its curriculum around Dr. Siegel's Mindsight approach. He has published extensively for the professional audience and the public, author of numerous articles and chapters. As acclaimed texts are The Developing Mind, How Relationships and the Brain Interact to Shape Who We Are, The Mindful Brain, Mindsight, The New Science of Personal Transformation, Brainstorm, The Power and Purpose of Teenage Brain. I think I personally have given that to every single client that I've ever known and people that I've ever known. The Whole Brain Child, 12 Revolutionary Strategies to Nurture Your Child, Developing Mind, No Drama Discipline, Child, The Whole Brain, The Way to Calm and Chaos to Nurture Your Child. There's so many of these. I'm just going down the list. It's just, and I've read every single one of them, Dr. Siegel. Mine, The Journey of the Heart of Being Human, which is already in front of me at this point, and your latest book that just came out, and I was listening through the audio book, Aware, The Science and the Practice of Presence, provides practical instructions for mastering the wheel of awareness, a life-changing tool for cultivating more focused presence and peace in one's day-to-day life. And Dr. Siegel's publications for professionals and the public have been translated into 40 different languages. Welcome to my show, Dr. Siegel.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I am really enjoying, I've enjoyed the mind, the journey of the heart of the human being, and then just listening to Aware, because I know we were going to talk about that. And I've always learned a lot from you, but I really enjoy this other concept of the wheel that you have created and really brought meditative and awareness and kind of the concept of the meditation and how to be aware into a whole different level. As I was listening and reading, it felt like this is no longer just an abstract concept. You have brought this process into details of how to go from stage to stage to stage to be aware of different parts of us and how to integrate all these parts. Please share with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's a very exciting moment to go from all these years of doing this in my clinical practice and then teaching it to students and then to have them work with their clients and then to bring it out into workshops systematically and then, as a scientist, kind of record those results and try to figure out why is the wheel helping us in these ways and what exactly is the mind that the wheel might be illuminating, and then to put this all together in a book that's now out for people to experience. I'm just very grateful for the journey and really excited to see how people take in the book and try out the Wheel of Awareness.
So when you talk about the Wheel of Awareness, you start from the process of how to become aware, and then become aware of being aware, and then exploring the different sensations that we have in our body, and then the mind, the emotions, and also you go into the beyond ourself. We go into this interrelationship between us and the world and other people, which you've coined the term me-we, which is MW is me and we together. And bringing all of that, kind of integrating it together as who we are and how we could train our brain into a system where we could create intention, and that intention focuses our attention, and out of that attention changes the chemistry of our brain and focuses all of our energy into becoming what we intend to be and creating what we intend to be.
Yes, I mean, it's a beautiful summary you're giving. I think underneath the whole process of the wheel is this idea that, or really two ideas. One is that integration is the basis of well-being, and integration is defined as different parts of something, like a system of a relationship or in your brain or whatever. Different aspects can be allowed to be unique and specialized. That's called differentiation. It's made different. And then you link those different parts so that they don't lose their unique components. They just become linked together so that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That's basically what integration is. And that looks like it's the fundamental basis of health. And that comes from all those books you just mentioned, this long line of reasoning, about health. It suggests that integration is the basis of well-being and health. So you take that idea and then combine it with the idea that consciousness, the human experience that we have, of knowing. I'm sure other animals, of course, have consciousness too, but just to stick with our human sisters and brothers, we are a consciousness driven essence, of what we have. And it looks like consciousness, the experience of knowing or being aware, and the knowns that we're aware of, those are elements of experience that are needed for intentional change or growth or development. So a parent needs a child to be conscious, or a teacher really works with consciousness, or a therapist works with consciousness, or even people listening to your show. I mean, they're conscious as they're listening to me say, hello. You have the hello, but then you have the knowing that I said hello. Mm-hmm. And that's what the awareness is, the knowing. So I took those two findings, that consciousness is needed for intentional change and integration is needed for health, and asked the question, what if you integrated consciousness? And then there was a table in my office, this is years ago now, and the table, we still have the table, it's got a glass hub and an outer wooden rim, and I said, what if we differentiated the knowing from the knowns, and symbolically placed the knowing in the hub of this table, let's call it a wheel, and the outer rim of this wheel is the different segments that have like the first 5 senses of knowns, of hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching. First segment of 4, you move a metaphoric spoke of attention over to the next segment of the rim, doing these one by one, where you explore the internal sensations of the body. Then you move the spoke over again to the third segment, and you differentiate all those things from mental activities like emotions and thoughts and memories, things like that. And then you move the spoke over yet again to the fourth and final segment of the rim, as you're pointing out, the sense of our interconnection with other people, with the planet. And then in a more advanced step, you even bend the spoke around and aim it right back into the hub itself, so that people can experience awareness of awareness. And that whole journey, doing this with 10,000 people systematically and recording the results when people took the microphone, has been absolutely fascinating to not only see that it helps bring more health into people's lives, but also, it is a window into the nature of the mind, and having this first-person, direct, subjective experience into integrating the mind that has been just absolutely amazing to then ask the question, what can we learn from the Wheel of Awareness experience with the 10,000 people? So it's these universal findings. Everyone's unique, but there are these common patterns. And then really say then, what is awareness itself? What is the hub of the wheel as a metaphor? What does it really mean in terms of a mechanism of mind? And that's been just absolutely thrilling to explore that with the people who do the wheel, with scientists, and then to write this book, Aware, which lays it all out step by step so people can learn how to do the wheel, take in the stories of others, do their own experience of the wheel, and then, go through systematically the science of the mind and the brain and integration and ultimately the science of energy to then make a proposal. And I'm doing some research now with people to kind of verify the empirical findings that could support or refute the proposal. But right now it fits the data, the proposal that's in the book about the nature of where consciousness comes from and how we can use that understanding then to understand how people change and grow, and how you can use it in your life as a reader to really change the conversation about who we are and transform ourselves towards health. Yes.
As you know, I created a model called awareness integration, which was interesting, and I actually use a lot of what I learned from your books in explaining the philosophy of that. The part that I was looking at was mostly the distinctions between thoughts, emotions, behaviors, the impact that we have, and the concept of relatedness between the way we view the world, the way we project about the world viewing us, and then the way that we are with ourselves. And as I was listening to your book, Aware, The Science and Practice of Presence, and listening to the Wheel of Awareness and actually doing it while I was listening and going through the exercises of your book, it's such an expansion of the concept of awareness itself, and then, like you said, sensation. And what was interesting in the book that you said that the more that we are integrating this part of the sensation within the construct of the thought process, that they become a dance together where when we are in our sensations, we don't necessarily construct the thought quiet down, and then when we focus on the thoughts, then we are not necessarily aware of the sensations. But the more that we do this practice, that we become a whole where all at once we have the capacity of experiencing it all, as I understood it, right?
Exactly. It's beautifully said. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the part of what I was experiencing. When people learn about meditation and mindfulness, a lot. This is a term a lot of people talk about. And obviously in the spiritual world, each meditative school has its own ideas of how to meditate. What I really enjoyed about your book, maybe because I'm a very cognitive person, is the explanation of the process is so beautifully done that it's no longer just somebody jumping into this pool and not necessarily knowing what happens and just goes by their subjective experience, that you brought it into a place that someone can actually follow the rim. They can follow each one of these steps to go from one step to the next, where their cognitive capacity can understand it and yet have the subjective experience and enjoy the experience while they're expanding their brain, their neural network, and it's not just experiential, it's experiential with the knowing.
Exactly. Yeah, and thank you for your kind words about the book. I really wanted to be just what you're saying, and you're actually the first person that I've spoken with who's listened to the audio, so that's kind of exciting too, because I read it out loud. It's so interesting to take the word meditation, which has so many reactions from people. Some people think of it as something really kind of very unfounded or just kind of odd or something like that. And yet the word meditation simply means, training the mind. And there are hundreds and hundreds of aspects of meditation. Not many of them have been studied. And so in Aware, I really draw on the ones that have been studied in very rigorous research paradigms. So, you're getting this kind of solid, science-backed view of how you can train the mind in these three ways where you focus attention, which you do in the first two segments of the RIM. You open awareness in the third segment of the RIM, and then you develop kind intention, which is your awareness of our connection with kindness and care, and that's the fourth segment of the RIM. So, I developed this wheel a long time ago, like in the late 90s, just to integrate consciousness, and it just seemed a natural thing to do because of those two scientific ideas: consciousness needed for change, integration for health. And I didn't know you would ever call this exercise, a reflective practice, you would ever call it a meditation, because I thought meditation meant something like, something you did like on a retreat with people who were of various religions or one or kind of the other, and I didn't have any background in that. So when I ultimately found out about mindful awareness kind of by accident in Parenting from the Inside Out, Mary Hartzell and I used the term be mindful, meaning be conscientious and caring and awake. People said, when do you teach us to meditate? It's in your book. And we said, what do you mean? And they would point to saying, be mindful. And they'd say, that's be a meditator. And I was so ignorant. I didn't know about that stuff. So then there was this whole cascade of, seeming coincidences of meeting various people like Jon Kabat-Zinn and being on a panel with him and him encouraging me to go. And he's a leader in the field of translating Buddhist meditation for secular use in medical settings. And so he had me go do a retreat for a week, which is my first time of doing formal meditation like that. And ultimately, when John and I taught together and he, did the Wheel of Awareness, he said, this is it's a mindfulness meditation. I said, it's an integration of consciousness, reflective practice. He said, no, it's a meditation, it's mindfulness meditation. I said, okay, I'll take it, whatever. I mean, if you want to call it that, that's okay. And then I started teaching with Jack Kornfield, and, it turns out that these three pillars of mind training, these focused attention, open awareness, kind intention, are in ancient traditions, it turns out, and just fortunately, they are the three components of doing the four-segment review and including bending the spoke around where you explore the hub itself, which is a very advanced practice apparently in the meditation world. We just do it right away pretty much in the wheel world. And it's just been fascinating to have this science-based integration of consciousness, reflective practice, then be experienced by people who've never meditated before, or people who run, meditation centers or monasteries, and have them find value in it, whether you've never done it before or you're really a teacher. And all I can say is, I think when you stick really close to the science, especially this interpersonal neurobiology world we live in, where we combine all the sciences together to come up with these odd ideas like integration is health, when you do that, I think it's kind of a natural thing to have a reflective way of building on this following statement: where attention goes, neural firing flows, and neural connection grows. So you can see the power of the focus of attention, which is how you're directing energy flow in your life with other people, within your body, but especially now we're talking about the brain, so that where you direct attention in the brain with your mind gets the brain to be active in particular patterns of networks. When those networks are firing together, they actually stimulate the activation of genes, which then produce proteins, which then basically make the connections among the neurons stronger. So essentially, where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows. So you can use your mind to change both the function and structure of the brain. And when it's done in an integrative way, the cool thing is you're basically building on a science approach to create a more integrated brain, and that creates more health in your life.
I remember, I think, meeting you at year 2000 in Evolution of Psychotherapy conferences, and I think that was the first time that I had ever seen this concept of meditation being introduced in the psychotherapy world, because, as you said, it was always different. It was always split. I remember reading Jack Kornfield's book, and I think I had some experiences that, when I went to my therapist, they told me if I didn't know that you were going through Kundalini experiences while you're reading a book, I would think you were having a bipolar manic episode. But seriously, I mean, they were so different than when you actually went into spiritual practices versus psychology and psychotherapy. You were the first person that I ever heard brought the other world to the psychotherapy world and made it scientific so we could understand what's going on. So thank you.
Well, it's very interesting. I don't know if you were in that room with 3,000 people where we did the wheel at the Evolution Conference, but it was, so it was just, there were 3,000 people in one room. We all did that's what they were there for. We did the Wheel of Awareness practice. And, I don't include this in my study because the data for the study, the 10,000 person study, is just, people who take the microphone, hear what they say, record what they say, and then really think deeply about their first person descriptions. So what I'm about to say isn't the data, but it is really exciting, as you could see when I would say, how many of you felt time disappear when you went into the hub? And, you see 1,000 hands rise up, you get some very quick, confirmation. It doesn't prove anything, but it just gives you a feeling like you're maybe on the right track. Because we can talk about, why does time disappear in the hub? And why do people feel this deep sense of connection from that spaciousness of the hub, in addition to, of course, the fourth segment of the rim? And so, I was just doing 2 week-long back-to-backs on, one was using the wheel in a scientific retreat on awe, and the other was more like a mindfulness retreat with classical meditation teachers like Jack Kornfield and Trudy Goodman and Tisha Bell. And we, it was so interesting to do them back to back because we did the wheel in both settings repeatedly, and you could see how, whether you're doing it from a scientific exploration point of view or you're doing it from, let's weave this into a classic meditation retreat, it worked beautifully. And when we got to the mechanisms of mind that the 10,000 person study suggests, and the data we keep on just getting informally, it really invites you to consider that the proposal that's explored in part 2 of the book may be accurate. It could be completely wrong, but it could be actually correct. And if it's correct, then we're at this very interesting moment, both in, the psychotherapy world, but also the world of spirituality, in addition to the world of science, to actually take our conversation with each other to a different level of discourse about not only what's going on, but what we might want to do to create more well-being in our world. So it's a really exciting moment to dive into that kind of depth,
You had said that kindness, empathy, compassion is a natural outcome of this type of an integration. Integration, I'm reading this actually, page 302 of your Mind, your book, which is Mind, because I don't have Aware in front of me. I was listening to an audio. But even in this book, at the end chapter, which then it leads itself to Aware, you say that integration of the self enables the differentiation of the individual me with an interconnected we. And being kind to one another, respecting differences, and cultivating compassionate connection is living an integrated life. And I'm sensing that's what you're coming to as we become aware, as we take care of ourselves. And as you had said in your book, Aware, the science and practice of the presence, as we begin in these awareness practices, become kind to ourselves, become deserving, become loving to ourselves, we shift our energy And then going from this just me to me and we, exploring or exporting kind of this energy of love and kindness, compassion around us. And then as we interpret each other's energy flow, or as we interrelate, or whether we behaviorally do something, or we're just at the presence of the being with that kind of love and compassion, that's how we also influence and interconnect with each other, and hopefully creating a better world for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, wow, there's so much to say about all the rich things you just said. I guess I'll just start in response with a story where I was asked to go to another country and do the Wheel of Awareness with the parliament of another country. Was having a lot of challenges on all sorts of levels. And anyway, we did the wheel, and like usual in a workshop, people take the microphone and they share what they experienced if they want to. And at the break, when we were having some snacks, one of the parliamentarians came up to me and he said, "Dan, I need to talk to you. Can we talk?" I said, "Sure." And he said, "I didn't share anything during the sharing time." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I noticed that." He goes, "Do you want to know why I didn't share?" I go, "Well, sure, I'd like to know." He goes, "When we did the Wheel of Awareness practice and we moved the spoke around," I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "And then we got to the part where you bend the spoke around right into the hub itself, so you're aware of awareness." I said, "Yeah." And then he starts speaking really slowly. His eyes get filled with tears, and he says, "I have never felt so much love before in my life. I felt so connected to everyone," he said. So there's a silence between us. I'm just soaking it in. I said, "So you didn't want to share that with the group?" He goes, "Absolutely not. No. He goes, "If I would have said I experienced love, they would have said that I'm just weak." Mm. And I said, "Okay, well, I understand. You didn't want to appear weak." He goes, "Oh, no. So you didn't want to say anything?" He goes, "No." So there's this silence between the two of us, and I look at him and I said, "So can I ask you a question?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, when you're sitting down to make public policy and public law, do you leave love out of your equations? And his eyes get really, really big. His finger comes up, he starts wagging at me, and then he rushes over to his fellow parliamentarians, and I don't know what they said, but they were chatting something a lot about something. And I realized that it's exactly what you're saying. There's a lot of reasons to believe that hub of the wheel, which has just a metaphor, of course, just a wheel metaphor, but the mechanism of the hub is actually the source not only of being aware, the subjective experience of knowing, but it's also the source of love and kindness and compassion and connection. And, this parliamentarian, had an experience that I hope will stay with him, because you can read that in a book and say, "Oh yeah, love is from awareness," and you just kind of brush it off. But when you experience it yourself, that is an immersion in not just a feeling, but a kind of perceptual shift that changes you. And what's so fascinating, like having just done all these workshops, it really taps people into a space of the mind. The metaphor is the hub, and if you want, we can talk about the mechanism. It gets a little, hard to do just without visuals, but in the book you'll see all these drawings from my daughter, Maddie Siegel, to help illustrate it. But when you realize the mechanism of what the hub really is, the more you can get people accessing that hub, the more we're going to actually have a world filled with kindness and love and compassion and connection. And the more we're away from that hub, the more we're lost on the rim, the more we're going to have separation and fighting and anger. And so while we can say, yes, 3-pillar meditation, that focuses attention, pillar 1, opens awareness, pillar 2, develops kind intention or loving kindness, pillar 3. Research shows, yes, your brain will become more integrated, so you're more regulated. Great. Stress will be reduced. Cortisol, stress hormone levels will be lowered. Fantastic. Immune system functioning will be improved. Great. You'll actually improve cardiovascular risk factors like lowering cholesterol, lowering blood pressure, optimizing how your heart is functioning. Fantastic. You're going to even change the epigenetic regulators. These are non-DNA molecules sitting on top of genes that help control inflammation. You'll reduce inflammation because of epigenetic changes. Amazing. And then finally, you're going to optimize the level of an enzyme called telomerase that repairs and maintains the ends of your chromosomes. And, I wanted to make sure all this stuff is accurate, so I sent it out to my scientific colleagues, and one of them is Alyssa Epple, and she wrote this beautiful book called The Telomere Effect.
Yeah, I've read that. It's an amazing
with
book.
Elizabeth Blackburn, the Nobel Prize winner who discovered all this telomere stuff, the caps of your chromosomes. So Alyssa calls me, or she emails me, she says, Dan, did you send the book to the printer yet? You've left something out. And I go, oh my God. She goes, so I contacted her and she said, look, everything is accurate in the book, but you've left one thing out. And I thought I had to write another chapter, whatever. I said, what did I leave out? She goes, you need to say that these 3-pillar trainings, they slow the aging process. I said, how can I say that? This is the world's expert in the aging process. She goes, you need to say that. That's what it does. When you develop presence, you slow the aging process, probably by all these means, but certainly by the telomere being maintained and repaired on the ends of your chromosomes. It keeps your cells healthy and you healthy, and it slows their aging. It slows your aging. So it even slows the aging process. So even with all that, that's like for your individual health benefits. It's just an amazing moment. I think we also have the cultivation of our connection to our inner, deeper aspect of who we are, and with kindness and care, and you extend that kindness and care also to realize we're interconnected. So there's an inner self and an inter self, if you will. And that way you start feeling the reality that you are not alone in this world. You're not a separate self. You are, if you will, the light of the candle beyond just the wax alone. And you get about 100 years to live in a body, fine. But you are much more than your skin-encased body. You are the light you give off, and it's the way you light up other people's wicks to create more light in our world. And I think we've never needed a shift in our view of what the self is, that I end the Aware book with, than now. We desperately need to change our relationship with what we call other people, which are really a part of ourselves, and the planet, which is really an extension of our global body. We need to live like that, not just talk like that. We need to really feel it, experience it, and really take care of each other in a much more comprehensive and natural way.
One of the most amazing concepts about the self, as I understood it, and please let me know if I understood accurately, is, somehow we had it that you become yourself and everything about you and your character kind of gets built until, the age 5 and whatever your parents did to you. And then, you gain your own experiences and you move forward, and then your brain comes up with all the meanings that it's going to, and it's going to create stories for you. And then you get caught into the stories. And yes, later on we figured, okay, you're not fixated object, and at any time, at any age, your brain has neuroplasticity, and it's going to change if you're going to shift and learn new skills and open your path. Yet, in this conversation that you had in Aware, and actually started with your book Mind and then completed in Aware, is that our self is not ourself. Our self is something that happens consistently inside and outside with others. There is no fixated self, as I keep hearing in my practice. Well, that's just the way I am. So there is none of that. That self is consistently being recreated, whether we're aware of it or not, whether we're intentional about it or not. So it'd be nice if we could be aware, intentional, and actually responsible, in a sense, for the self that is constantly getting created and recreated. And that's where the term MWE came up with, right? Did I get it
exactly
right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Say more, please, about it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems so maybe so much like a given that the word SELF. Self means something going on in your skin-encased body, or, if you're more inclined toward the brain in your head, people will point to their brain, they'll point to their head. And we can understand that, the brain in the head does have this tendency to take energy streams that come at it from before we're even born and to turn them into categories, to try to divide the world up into what can be called concepts. And these concepts often get linguistic symbols attached to them, like the word self. So, someone might say to me when I'm a kid, oh, little Danny, be careful this way, or little Danny, study for your spelling bee, or whatever. And so the linguistic symbol is a socially constructed representation of a category that the brain is trying to conceptualize this huge array of energy patterns coming at it. So it's understandable that the brain in the head does that. But then what happens, unfortunately, is you get a double reinforcing loop where you get the brain itself is continuing to believe its own linguistic symbols, and then the shared social construction of saying the self is in the body or in the head continues to reinforce the accuracy and the completeness of that view. And so then we're what's called embedded in this information sphere, this infosphere that continually reinforces the belief, let's say, that the self is separate. So, the next book I'm writing is all about this topic, and so I'm kind of really deeply, deeply devoted to it and fascinated with it. But I don't know what our human family should do. So the simplest thing we've been doing over the last little bit of time is to try to get different languages to come up with a word beyond me and beyond we, but to put them together as a we. So we have about 12 languages now that people have the fun of this. It's like a we campaign. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing what a little simple word can do, and it may be that simple effort we could all do collectively might be the trick, because we don't have a word in English, at least, and you can tell me in languages you speak if there is a language for an integrated identity. We have, obviously in English we've got we, which implies like togetherness, but you lose the me. We have other, which implies there's self and other, and I know everyone uses that term. Even a term like self-compassion sounds so sweet, but it actually reinforces the notion that yourself is in your body and that the other is in another body that is not you. Well, we need to change something in our human family to really allow you to see that we're kind of going at this wrong. We're seeing the self as somehow only in our bodies, yet we are each other. Is really, I think, the more comprehensive way of looking at this.
I think in the cultures that are more societal, we have the we, which considers that the value of the me is not in the me. The value of the me is just within a we. So it doesn't allow
exactly.
a lot of the uniqueness that a self and an individual self could bring up to the surface. And I know in my culture, when a lot of people just call it we, like they talk we, but what they're really meaning is what I think and then project that the world should or is.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
so it's kind of because it's a societal concept, but if the societal concept comes from my projection of what is, or as it intrudes itself upon me, then the boundaries are very, very blurred. But that's so different from what you're saying. You're saying that the me has a lot of value, and the we has a lot of value, and then there's something that gets created in the middle space. The same way, for example, when we work with couples, there's two people, but there's something gets created within that relationship in the middle space that allows them to be completely a different person with each other versus who they are maybe with anybody else. So you're also talking about that in-between space that is constantly creating and recreating each one of us and the totality. So
exactly, yeah.
That's a place of awareness. That's a place of looking at a particular space that I don't think it has. I haven't seen it being looked at in that particular way, except when we've done actually couples therapy, because we've had to look at that middle piece. But now you're that part of extending it to also saying that it isn't just the space in between, but that space in between creates and recreates us the same way we keep generating whatever it is. It keeps regenerating us. And as the whole, we keep regenerating it. And we do this anyway, so it's more like, can we be conscious about it? Can we be intentional about it? Can we be responsible and accountable about what is versus it's happening anyway? Right?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way of describing it. We can be accountable. I guess, as educators, you and I can try to be accountable in the words we use. As a writer, too, I think there's a responsibility. So, like, I'm very sensitive to when I start to type the word self. Or, it's hard. The languaging is so hard because, like, if I want to say, okay, you want to have a kind regard, and now look how awkward this sounds, kind regard for your inner experience, the experience, inter-experience, and the experience within the body that was not a body that you were born into. Mm-hmm. Right? So that I avoided as best I could the word other, because otherwise what you would say is, you want to be kind to what goes on inside of you and what goes on in others. Mm-hmm. Now, it sounds so innocent, and maybe it is, and maybe I'm just like unnecessarily obsessed with this wording issue. But when you say self and other, it reinforces, even without your intention, the idea that the self is in the body. Okay. So I've been trying to say things like the inner self and the inter self. Right. Which it's a little weird. It's maybe better to say inner mind and intermind. That kind of works a little better. So, I've been, talking with a bunch of academics about this, and, we were playing around with the notion maybe this word self should just be dropped altogether. Just try not to use it. But we realize it's too much embedded in culture to drop the word. So then you have this issue, well, do you then, what? Do you replace it with another word maybe? Or what do you actually do? So I don't know. This is why writing this next book is so challenging, because you really want to, find something that's useful. What's been really, really interesting, and it's going to be interesting as Aware gets read by people, is, what's incorporated directly into the Aware process of the Wheel of Awareness is, in fact, ending it with well wishes for Mui. Yeah. And so far, the huge response when I've done this in workshops, at least, has been incredibly positive. Wonderful. And people, like even yesterday, I was doing this up at a company in Silicon Valley, and one of the engineers said, she never has felt comfortable ever kind of wishing wellness on herself, with the word I or me. But when we got to the we part, mm-hmm. she felt this energy of acceptance and release, and it made her very emotional, yes. In front of her, peers. And it was really beautiful because she could say, for the first time with the word we, I felt like I could, take on these wishes. So, of course, two of the leading thoughts that came up were, you can't say I because you feel like you don't deserve it, or, which is a common view, or is it actually you can't say I because you know I, as meaning what goes on inside your body, is actually a lie.
Mm.
And it's just wrong, and you reject it. So I said this to her, and she got a huge smile on her face. So I said, maybe this is not an issue of, I don't deserve. Maybe you're just deeply realizing how you're truly interconnected. Mm. That's just the nature of who you are.
Yes.
And it was a beautiful example, and this happens a lot. Some other time, there was a guy who got to the we at the end of the Wheel of Awareness practice. And when he took the microphone to share, he said a very similar thing. He said, I've always had this kind of social anxiety, this kind of social phobia. And I don't know why, but after we did the practice and I got to the we, somehow I felt like I don't have to be afraid of others because they're really not others.
Right.
They're a part of who I am.
Exactly.
And the energy in him, because he had spoken earlier in the workshop, it was a week-long workshop, he had spoken earlier, the energy you could feel in him was such a relief and a release, that it just made me feel like there's more to words than just the letters that comprise them.
Exactly.
And the we word is, it's got this potency that I'm just really excited to see how we can support the meaning of it. Obviously, as we're talking about an integrated self. That's both saying, yes, you are in a body, you have an interior life, but you also have an inter life. You're massively interconnected with the other people on the planet. And so that's really what we is. It isn't just about your connection with people. It's your connection with all of nature. And so when you think about climate issues, we really need them. We now,
yes, to be safe,
just for the sake of our climate's well-being.
Yes. Our time is up. We've actually passed 2 minutes. It's just been so exciting to talk to you. I'm just, kind of moving along with it. So thank you so much for accepting my invitation again. Past 2 times we were on TV, this time on the radio, and hopefully when your next book comes, I'd love to have you on the show again. And everyone who's listening, please go and buy Aware, The Science and Practice of Presence by Dr. Daniel Siegel. Thank you again for being on my show.
Thank you, Foojan. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
And for all of you who are listening, thank you for listening with your heart. Create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. Bye-bye.
You're listening to The Inner Voice with Dr. Foojan Zeine, only on LA Talk Radio.